Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, commissioners, members of the European Parliament, young delegates, ladies and gentlemen, and good afternoon and welcome to this roundtable entitled Innovation for Europe, Skills for the Future, organised as part of the Our Future Mobility Now project by ACEA, the European Automobile Manufacturers Association, in cooperation with the EU's Youth on the Move programme and the youth lobby organisation Think Young. My name is Jackie Davis. I will be animating our debates this afternoon. And as you can see, this is no ordinary Brussels conference. I'm going to walk around a lot. You're all sitting in armchairs. There is no stage. There will not be, apart from a brief opening and a little presentation later, there will be no speeches. This is very much about having a discussion. And that is exactly what Our Future Mobility Now is all about. It has been about creating an online community for continuous dialogue with young people, with the people who will face the mobility challenges of the future and will have to come up with the answers. And today, they have an opportunity. They've been meeting this morning. They have done some workshops discussing the two key issues we're addressing today, innovation and skills. They have things they want to say. They have questions they want to ask. So we're going to hear from them a little bit later on. And the two key questions we want to answer is how to develop innovative solutions that we will need to meet future mobility challenges. And I should mention, you may notice, and it's no coincidence, this is grey and this is green. This is the innovation section, and over here is the skills section. However, when we open up the debate, it's not divided. It's not that only these people can talk about innovation and only these people can talk about skills. It is everybody is involved. But as I say, it's going to be very interactive, and I hope we're going to get a lot of debate between the policymakers, between the captains of industry, and between our young delegates. Just to sum up, one of our young delegates who participated in this event last year as well, I thought put it very nicely earlier when he was talking about innovation, and he said, it's putting knowledge in the room and creating something big. And he said it's about putting our ideas together with the experience of the policymakers and the CEOs. That's what this is all about, and that's what we're here to do. But first, it is my great pleasure to give the floor to Sergio Marchioni, who is president of ACEA and CEO of both Fiat and Chrysler, who's going to make some introductory remarks to get us going. Sergio, over to you.
This is probably the most difficult part of my day because I'm supposed to read prepared remarks. And for most of you who know me, I do not follow instructions well. So I'm going to try and be disciplined. I just finished a session with my colleagues who, by the way, are here, and I should introduce them, the other CEOs. It's Harry Shippers, am I pronouncing your name correctly, Harry? He's the head of DAF, and then we have Didier Leroy, who is the head of Toyota Europe, and Alfredo Altavilla, who is the CEO of Iveco. And then we have Ivan Hodic, who's the Director General. Where the hell is Ivan? He's standing in the back. Ivan, who's the Director General of ACEA. But we just finished meeting with the press, and we were, as expected, bombarded with a gazillion questions about how to resolve the automotive industry issues going into 2013 and 14, and I think it's fair to say that none of us had what I would call brilliant answers. But anyway, I'm not going to try and stick to the script, and I think as Jackie mentioned, this session is about mobility and about the future, and I think it is important that as we look at this program that we allow the relevant portions of society, i.e. the youth, to participate in this dialogue and to be the single largest drivers of that process because, and I hate using quotations from Einstein, but I found him to be an incredibly bright and insightful man, but he said that he was going he was going to only start worrying about the future because that's where he intended to spend the rest of his life. And I think it's incredibly wise advice. We have launched this event last June. It's been roughly 18 months that we've built an active online presence, and we're delighted again to be here today for this debate. It is rare that industry leaders and politicians come together to exchange views and to do this in an environment such as Brussels, although I've had insightful conversations with some of the European politicians that have sort of changed my view about the value of politics going forward. But I think that we should take this opportunity to really try and establish, in a very frank and open way, a context for a dialogue that needs to be had about what kind of future we want for this industry. It's rare that we can find, as I said, CEOs and people who have other occupations. I spent some time at lunch talking to a variety of young people, some of whom are working for automotive companies, some others who are at the periphery of the business, and some others who have nothing to do with the car business in and by itself, but they have a huge interest in promoting a mobility agenda. And I was incredibly encouraged by the widespread talent that exists and that is not just focused on what we consider to be the traditional art of the automotive industry or car making as a business. So I extend a warm welcome to all the young people in this room who have come here to express their ideas, to voice their concerns, and to raise questions about the skills and the innovations that are needed for the future of mobility and for the future of Europe itself. For those of you who don't know, and this is pure factual propaganda, but it's propaganda, we employ 11.6 million people as an industry in Europe, and this accounts for 5.3% of the population that is employed. More importantly, and equally important, we are the largest private investor in research and development, and that's an area that is often neglected by a number of critics who have taken on this industry, I think, unjustly over the years for what it's done. But we do spend close to 26 billion euros in research and development every year to help make cars and trucks and buses safer and certainly more ecologically friendly and compliant. In terms of innovation, many recent and ongoing achievements are helping us to reinvent mobility and transform our sector. And for instance, thanks to massive investments in technologies, our truck manufacturers now have slashed pollutant emissions to near zero levels. We've also built up considerable know-how in the field of electric vehicles, be they battery electric or with fuel cells, and they will all help us turn the buzz of e-mobility into a reality at some point in time in the future. I can tell that Jackie is getting absolutely bored listening to this propaganda. I'm going to try and move it on very quickly here. We're here today to deal with two basic issues. One is skills and the other one is innovation, as two of the pathways to help Europe out of the current crisis and to enable the European automotive industry to remain one step ahead on the global stage. I'm going to ignore the rest of the comment. I can only tell you one thing, and I can tell you this from having operated a business now on a global scale for a number of years. After all is done, notwithstanding the issues that we're facing as an industry, at least in terms of the structural issues that are impacting the industry in 2012 and 2013, the only way in which any of us are going to safeguard this industry into the future is by making sure that we're one step ahead of the competition. And whether that implies that we create an environment, and I'm not trying to play homage to the commissioner in charge of the environment who's here with us today, but how do we create a coherent structural context within which we can make ecological achievements part of society's response to mobility, and this needs to be thought through and very carefully orchestrated at the European Union level, not by the commissioner on her own, but by a wider collaboration with, I think, the rest of the commissioners at the table. Either we embrace this as a concept and we make innovation the key distinguishing trait of the industry going forward, or because of our history, we're going to be doomed into becoming a second-tier industry. We're going to work, and I can speak on behalf of my colleagues here, I think we're going to work very diligently to avoid that from happening. I think you need to understand that this is an industry that is under threat. There's no way in which we can camouflage the reality that we're currently all experiencing. It is real. But I think that we all know that the only way we're going to protect our future is by investing in it and making us sufficiently different from the rest to protect the core skills that have been at the heart of the development of this industry over the last 100 years. In the absence of that commitment, we will be obliterated. So on that joyous note, I invite Jackie to resume the proceedings here and to take it from here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sergio. And as you said, thank you for that uplifting start to our discussions, but a reminder of just how important these issues are. Innovations and the skills that we're going to need to deliver those innovations, because without the skills, we can't have the innovation. Just to underline the importance of this sector of the economy, of the employment and jobs, the European Commission President, Jose Manuel Barroso, couldn't be with us this afternoon, but he has sent us this video message. Let's see what he had to say.
For inviting me for the second time to its youth event on Our Future Mobility Now. I regret very much that I could not be with you today, but the video message gives me an opportunity to share with you a few thoughts. Among many other challenges it faces, the automotive industry is confronted today with the need to be able to respond to future mobility demands. These demands will not only increase, but they will also become more sophisticated. Consumers will ask for a kind of mobility that is both more respectful of the environment and safer. Mobility that is both tailor-made to individual needs and still at an affordable price. The future mobility will without any doubt entail a profound transformation of the European automotive industrial base. Such a transformation has to start now, taking also into account the current automotive market outlook in Europe. I strongly believe that we can count on the automotive industry to successfully transform itself. I'm also confident that I can count on all young people with the right skills coming from all over Europe and who are well represented today. Together we can make this transformation happen. I believe in the need for a European vision, European policy that will support the transformation of the industry and enable young people to innovate and devise their future mobility solutions. The European Commission is now getting close to finalizing its European vision and policy for the automotive industry for the current decade. In June this year, the CARS 21 high-level group's final report was adopted. Based on the input from this report, the Commission will soon adopt an action plan entitled CARS 2020. Translate the recommendations of the CARS 21 report into policy action. The action proposed will range from promotion of clean vehicles to development of infrastructure for alternative powertrains, and from promotion of new skills to international harmonization of technical requirements. Once Action Plan CARS 2020 will be adopted, the role of the Commission of all our member states will be to make sure the policies announced are well implemented. But I also count on the full support of the automotive industry to reach new ambitious targets and on the support of young people to constantly fuel this process with fresh ideas and new initiatives. I wish you a very successful and inspiring event.
Okay. So thank you in absentia to the Commission President, and that really sets the scene very much for our debate, both in terms of the challenge and the importance of meeting that challenge. We're going to move straight into the innovation debate, and before we do that, let me please welcome our guest speakers in this session. As I say, there are no speeches, but we have young delegates and guest speakers, and our guest speakers are Connie Hedegaard, the European Commissioner for Climate Action, Janusz Potočnik, who is European Commissioner for the Environment, Libor Rouček, MEP, who is a member of the European Parliament's Foreign Affairs Committee and Vice President of the Socialist and Democrat Group, Alfredo Altavilla, CEO of Iveco, which is part of Fiat Industrial, and Didier Leroy, who is President and CEO of Toyota Motor Europe. Going to hear from all of them in a little while, but first of all, we've asked our young delegates to do something quite impossible. They spent the morning in workshops, brainstorming ideas, coming up with questions that they wanted to ask to all of you. And I'm going to ask one of them from the innovation workshop to sum up in just a couple of minutes what that discussion was all about. So Felix, let me give you a microphone, and if you could tell us in headlines only what your group discussed and if you have any messages for this audience. Just talk and the mic should come on.
Hello.
Yep.
Good afternoon from my side. Yeah, when my family dropped me off yesterday morning, that was when we arrived, my younger sister asked me basically a very simple question. She said, Felix, I know you're going to Brussels. By the way, what are you doing there? And I said, Louisa, you should know what I'm doing there. I'm trying to explain that to you every day. I'm trying to show some people the advantages of sharing. And my sister said, okay. What we want to share is a lot of things here, and what we have to share. So the European and actually also the global automobile industry is standing at the point concerning alternative energies, concerning alternative materials, where everybody is holding itself back because no one wants to be the next one, the next step, which is doing a mistake, causing costs. This one has to carry. Now, if we think about that, let's see, it's not just cost, so a matter of finance. It's also a matter of technology, and it's a matter of risk. And what if we all together, all automobile manufacturers, go this step together? We say we share our financial challenges, so everybody's carrying its own package. We share our knowledge, so everybody knows this. Everybody had this in the university in the first courses. Economies of scope, very simple thing. And in that way, we also share our risks. And I think this is basically a very simple thing. Everybody goes the same step, and at this point in time, we all at the same place. If it goes well, we all in a very positive position. If it does not go well, then nobody lost anything in competition against anyone. Okay. It's a very neutral way.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Felix, and thank you to everyone who was in that workshop. And we will be hearing from some of the others later, but before we do, I would like our guest speakers just to react to that thought, that idea. And we're talking about innovation now. Sergio underlined how important it is. Presumably, you would echo that it is important, but what do you see as the key challenges, both for policymakers and for the industry, in order to meet that challenge? And can we is sharing a utopia? Perhaps this is one particularly for our CEOs. Can you share more? Or is it possible, and if it is, how do we do it? And share perhaps between you. And let me just grab my microphone. Commissioner, if I could ask you for a quick thought first, please.
First, thank you very much, Felix, and your group. And I think this concept of sharing, also sharing risks, that very much reflect what I would say as a policy tool here could be regulation, standards, because that is exactly that you share sort of the effort. Everybody will have to sort of do their part, because we share the environmental cost, we share the congestion problems, the noise problems, we share the climate consequences. So in that sense we share, so we should also share what to do here. So I think this concept is very well, and that's what we are actually trying to do with standards for cars, standards for electric vehicles and the infrastructure there, standards for fuels. Politicians beside that will then also have to think planning, because in the cities we also have to share sort of pro and cons, what kind of cities do we want, and finally the mix between public and private transport. When we're talking about mobility, we also have to think, just also a bit outside only the car thing. There are many alternatives, and the big trick is how do we take care that they interact, all the different modes of transportation, that they interact very well together. I think that is some of the political challenges we're having. In order to then go where we need to go, then there is also a responsibility with citizens, but maybe we can come back with that.
Hopefully we can come back on that. Commissioner Potočnik, if I could ask you as well, do you agree with this emphasis on sharing the burden between policymakers, between industry, and perhaps the citizens' role as well? And if so, what do you see the policymakers' role as?
Hi to everybody. I think the point which you made is up to the point. Alternative energies, alternative materials. We need to transform our economies to a more low carbon and more resource efficient. And basically in that you touched both things. So I would very much be in favor of that direction. I think basically we have no alternative to that development. So it's really the question when and how we engage into that. Concerning the research and innovation efforts, I don't know if you know, I was previously responsible for science and research before I went to the environmental area. And I think sharing the knowledge, sharing the money, sharing financing also on EU level, trying to put the things together, private partnerships, private-public partnerships, and those things are actually the things through which we can do the things which you have proposed.
Thank you very much indeed. Libor Rucik, if I could come to you now and just ask you really the same question. If you agree that they have identified a central response to the challenge, how can you as policymakers help?
Yes, we do have to share, but also I think we have to discuss all the issues, and we have to discuss all the issues with all the stakeholders. That means, for instance, when we talk about the car industry, we have to discuss it with the car industry. We have to take into account, the technological development, what the car industry is capable to do, let's say, in 5 or 10 years' time, so that politicians, no matter whether in the Commission or in the Parliament, that we don't set up some impossible tasks, impossible regulations which the industry is not capable to fulfill. So for this reason, I very much welcome debates like this, so that they are the CEOs of the industry, that they are politicians both from the Commission and Parliament, and especially and above all young people, so that we have an open discussion, permanent discussion, and on the basis of the discussion we can see the future and share the future.
Thank you.
Because we are responsible both for the development, for employment, but of course we want to have sustainable environment and so on.
Thank you. Alfredo Altavilla, that is presumably what he is saying, music to your ears. Got to work with you as industry, but let me turn it the other way. What's the biggest challenge for industry then? He's said policymakers must work with you. What's the challenge? What do you need to do?
Of course, we will welcome working closely with the European Parliament, the European Commission, to try and develop a harmonized innovation for the industry. Over lunch, I got the $100 million question from one of the guys here. Is innovation customer-driven or legislation-driven? And this is actually the real issue that we have to confront every day. And the problem is that the answer is that most of the times, at least over the last few years, innovation is legislation-driven, and it ends up being an added cost for the customer. And this is certainly not a win-win situation. So more and more, we need to realign what customers want in terms of innovation from the industry and what legislators are asking us to develop.
Thank you very much. And if I could come to you, Didier Loire. It is a mixture of both, isn't it? The mobility challenges are demographic. They're in terms of the number of cars. Keeping Europe going is absolutely crucial. So it's a mixture of the legislation that's required and the customer needs and indeed the needs of your sector.
Yes, that's right. And let me just come back 1 second of sharing. I think one of the reasons why we have this European Association for Automotive Industry, it's also to share. It's also to share knowledge, to share some strategy and some elements, but at the same time, keep competitiveness. Means we cannot just share everything and just one single product for all the different customers in Europe. So we share a lot of different information, but at the same time, we should keep also some things by ourselves in terms of global competition. This is also regulation. Just to answer to your question about challenges, I really believe that for me, we summarize, and I summarize the challenges in 3 main areas. The first one is exactly as you said, regulation, environmental sensibility. We have much more sensibility now for the environmental aspect than it was many years ago. Please remember, when we introduced the Prius in 1997, nobody understood why we introduced this kind of car. Now everybody are talking about how can we reduce the CO2 emission. The second point is technology. We have a so big evolution of the technology, not only the technology of the car, but also all the communication from the car to the external world, means all the ITS system we can have, which has a huge impact. And we cannot do everything by ourselves, so we should share, find the right partnership within our business. And the third point is what we said before about what is the customer expectation. And when we come back with also share understanding feasibility with the European Parliament, one of the key elements is innovation is absolutely key for growth. Innovation, it's absolutely key to prepare the futures, but innovation should stay affordable for the customer. So if we don't respect this key element, which is affordability of the innovation, we are facing a big problem because we have fantastic innovation, but nobody can buy this one.
Okay, thank you very much. And that very much echoing what the Commission President said in his video when he talked about mobility, but at an affordable price. Okay, I think we have some more questions and comments from our young delegates to you all. Natalie, would you like to go first?
Good afternoon. To build on what's just been saying, what we've just been talking about, in my own experience in the automotive industry and also talking to Mr. Altavilla before, there seems to be a growing disconnect between the industry, the Commission and also the Parliament here in Brussels. How do we feel we can strengthen those lines, and also whose responsibility is it?
Okay, let's come back. I'll give you a chance to answer, but let's take a few more questions before we do. Where is Dominic? Dominic, I've lost you for a moment. Hang on a minute. Can I take the mic off you, please, and give it to Dominic? Dominic, your question or indeed comment.
So on my side, to broaden up the view on Europe and its matters, I wanted to know if you think this sharing, this collaborating more on an industry level, on a politician level, could help us get out of our crisis, which is striking us for quite a few years ongoingly. So that is for me.
Thank you. And I think when you were discussing as a group this morning, I was quite struck when I heard you feeding back, because you talked about the crisis as an opportunity. We asked you to talk about opportunities and challenges, and instead of listing it as an obstacle, you listed it as an opportunity. So it'll be interesting to know whether our speakers also see it like that. Before I come back and give them a chance to respond, are there any more questions from our young delegates? Anything else you would like to ask at this point? Is there one? Okay, let's go over here. Please.
I've got a question what possibly Connie Hedegaard could ask for, which is, I think it says in the brief before that consider the most innovative countries in Europe are Denmark and Sweden, and we talked about sharing ideas. So I was wondering how we can all be a bit more Danish or Swedish in Europe to be as innovative than Denmark has been so far.
Okay, how can we be as innovative as the Danes? Sounds like one of those cards with stereotypes, you know, as good cooks as the Italians or the whatever. Any more questions from our young delegates, please, because I want to give them priority. Felix, let me just check if there's anybody else, but I will let you come in otherwise. Okay, we've got two here. Thank you. And it's helpful if you just tell them who you are, first name and where you're from.
Yes. Hi, I'm Michael. And my question is concerning innovation. So, in the past years, Europe lost a lot of competitiveness and compared to US and mainly. So how do you see this, and how do you plan to improve this? Because what is left from Europe, you have all this now new emerging markets, you have a strong US, and Europe basically doing nothing towards innovation. This Lisbon strategy basically failed to be the most competitive area until 2010. So what is the plan now for Europe to basically survive?
Okay. So up till now, you're not convinced they've done what's needed on competitiveness. You want to know what they're going to do in the future. Please, Sid.
Thank you. Sid Lucassen, ALDE. I heard a few speakers talk about, on the one side, this is what the legislative branch wants us to do. On the other hand, this is what the consumers want, and that there was a strong duality between these two things. Yet, this sparkled the question is ultimately the demands that the legislative branches make of the car industry not also on behalf of the customers.
Okay, thank you very much. I think I'll come back now because otherwise there'll be far too much to answer. There was one very specific question to you, Commissioner Hedegaard, so if you could perhaps pick up first.
I will try and not answer that. I come from Denmark, as was sort of implied, but if there is one thing we do not know anything about in Denmark, then it's car production. We don't have any cars, we don't have any companies, so to be sort of the wise guy there, I'll try to skip that one. But in general terms, we have one experience, and that is that if you are innovative, if you set up environmental standards, then you can actually pull your companies to become more innovative.
We have seen that in lots and lots and lots of areas in the country I come from. Pumps, heating systems, energy systems, renewable systems, enzymes, lots of areas where we managed to do that, and where people at the time where we came up with these regulations and standards and laws said, oh no, this is going to be expensive for the companies. But today they say, thank God that you did this, because which area of the Danish export is growing the most right now? Actually, the green export areas are. So that is also creating jobs. Of course, you have to do it in an intelligent and balanced manner. You cannot just run ahead like this and then others are moving nowhere. But I think that we have a case there to prove. It's not always bad if industries are forced to do a little more than they would do by themselves.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And Commissioner, if I could come to you on this question of... this question really of whether you see the crisis as an opportunity. Commissioner Hedegaard just talked there about green jobs. I was very struck by how positive they were.
No, I would just first like to react on one of the things which the colleague already mentioned. This customer-driven and regulation-driven. None of the regulation which we are proposing is not unhuman-driven. So everything what we are doing is human-driven. And we should be aware that none of the policy which we are proposing ever is driven because of the interests of environment. It is driven because of the interest of human beings. It's not the question either the earth will survive, it's the question either the human beings will survive on the earth. That's the real question which we are dealing with. So we should stop pretending that the things which are done through the environmental policy are actually the policy which try to protect something awkward. It's trying to protect us, human beings. And the second is on the R&D, and I remember car industry is absolutely the strongest R&D pusher in EU. 25% approximately of all R&D investment is coming from car industry. In Europe, we are strong also in chemical industry, while we are lagging behind very much in ICT, hardware, software, and biotech if we compare the areas globally. I think that our major global advantage is absolutely playing on the things where we have strong cards. Knowledge, innovation, and resource efficiency. I think we are intelligent enough that we understand today that we are importing majority of our raw materials 6 times more than we are exporting. This is not the question of our environmental performance, it's the core question of the competitiveness of the future of Europe. I was speaking fast.
Thank you very much. And if I could come over to you, Didier, because you said earlier about the Prius, and you said when we invented it, no one thought we needed it. The customer-driven question. One of the things I know came up in the discussion in the innovation group today was, okay, we can have an innovation. How do we know anyone's going to want it once we've produced it, and that they're going to pay for it? This was one thing they came back to and saw as a problem. What is your answer to that? Do we need a change of mindset among customers so that they then want the innovations that you produce? A thought from you on that, and a thought from Alfredo, as well as picking up on the other questions, please.
Yeah, this is always a risk, of course, but innovation is absolutely necessary. So if we are not creating some things new, if we are not creating some things which will answer to the needs of the society, starting from the customer, we will always suffer about a lot of difficulties. So the key challenge for us, and this is some things which is a little bit difficult to share, because this kind of things, it's a kind of competitive advantage versus for the different car makers or trucks makers. So how can we make sure that we can anticipate the needs and create strong innovation? I'm a little bit more positive versus some of you about innovation in Europe, because I really believe specifically, and I'm working for Japanese car makers, but even in a Japanese car maker, everybody, I can tell you, recognize that Europe is the birthplace of the automotive industry, is the birthplace of so many innovation, and we have so strong potential partners, suppliers working in Europe and developing business in Europe with so many strong innovation that more and more we want to work with them. So we are reinforcing our innovation, we are reinforcing our innovation in Europe, and we definitely want to develop this kind of things together. But again, customer-driven, I fully agree on the fact that regulation, I will just give you a very practical example about what I would like to avoid. It's to have some people who told us, oh, you can't do it because some suppliers told us that they have the equipment for that. They didn't tell you at which price they have this kind of equipment and who will pay this kind of things. So again, we should consider that how can we develop together some things on which we have a clear predictability.
Okay, thank you. Alfredo, a thought on that, if you would, and also because I think it was your, what you said at lunch that inspired Natalie's question, this question of strengthening the links between the industry and the policymakers. And then, Libor, I'll come to you.
Absolutely. I mean, I fully agree with the point that Didier made. At the end, innovation must be affordable, otherwise we end up with no customer for what we develop. And there's one more point that I think it's important. All of us are global companies. And what is really important going forward is that we get an alignment of the standards of all the regulations across the world. Today, when it comes to environment regulations, we have different regulations throughout the world. And this is only increasing a lot research and development costs for the industry. And this is an unnecessary burden that we should try to eliminate through an harmonization of the policies worldwide.
Okay, thank you very much. And Libor, if I could come to you on this question of competitiveness, because that's the one bit we haven't had a chance to address yet. Are policymakers doing enough? We heard about the sense there of failure so far, really, in this area. What more do you need to do? Is Europe 2020, this new growth and jobs, well, I say new, it's not so new anymore, growth and jobs agenda, is that the answer?
We are in Brussels. We have here representatives of the global car industry. We have here representatives of the European institutions. So, yes, there is a chance to get out stronger out of the crisis, but I think we have to think more in European or pan-European or even global terms. If I look, the money we spend on research, as far as the mobility car industry is concerned, I think we spend only something like 600 million per year. So we should be thinking in those categories. The things we can share, the things we can do together, is perhaps to make the European public more aware of those issues. And when we talk, for instance, about the budget 2013, the financial perspective 2014-2020, we should put more money into research development as far as the transport policy is concerned. Perhaps not only the car industry, but transport.
Sure. Sustainability. Thank you. I know this was an issue that came up in your group this morning. Does anybody want to pick up on this question of the money? The $64 million question, as we all call it. Any of our young delegates want to? A quick one, Commissioner, and then I want to give the young delegates one.
Quick, the proposal in the MFF, which is also on your table, we are proposing that from the current figure, 54 billion for science and research, we would increase it in the next financial perspective to 80 billion. So I think it's important that also in those crisis times, we really focus on the structure of the budget, which could draw us in longer terms out of the crisis. And I fully agree with you that this is an important part.
Thank you very much indeed. Any more questions? We have about just over 5 minutes left in this session. Let's take a few. I'm going to give the priority, if I might, to the young delegates. If I can squeeze you in afterwards, I certainly will, sir. Please.
During the introduction this morning, Mr. Hodak highlighted the importance of being international as an aspect of future mobility. In these days, we got from the news that the Erasmus program is at risk for lack of funds. I would like to know if European Commission and industry would like to do something to avoid this.
Okay, more links, I think, to our skills discussion in the second half, but we will, if they can, give us a thought on that. Was there any other? Yes, please.
As I understand, you're saying that we put too little money into innovation. So, in what respect is the rest of the world more innovative than Europe, which obviously has been doing really well with only this little money?
Okay, so what are the others doing that we would want to emulate? Any more from our young delegates? Yeah, hang on. I'm going to get fit this afternoon. It's about mobility, this conference. That's why I thought I'd move around.
Hello, everybody. I think there's a very good investment in R&D. And the problem is how can you have a market take-up of these technologies? And I would ask, how can you promote these to overcome this barrier of market take-up of the new technologies?
Okay, thank you very much. And not to be ageist, I would like to try and include one question from a member of our audience. So please, if you could make it a quick one. Thanks.
Just to bring forward an idea you asked before, whether the crisis could be an opportunity. And I think, as to my experience, it's definitely not an opportunity for young professionals to try to enter their job. So I thought whether it's a good idea to set up kind of a think tank in front of the development of any big OEM. And when the OEMs go short shift, they actually can train also young engineers. That's maybe one of the idea to overcome crisis for young employees.
Thank you very much. Okay, let's take a last quick round of comments from our guest speakers. And of course, this crucial question they've just read, the who pays question. The industry, Sergio mentioned right at the beginning, in terms of this is the largest private sector. This sector invests more in R&D than others, but you're in difficult times. So can you afford to go on paying for it? We're also in times of austerity and cuts in government spending. Can they go on affording to pay for it? And if not, how are we going to get out of this? Because can we say, I tell you what, let's put this off until we can afford it? Let's get questions, let's reverse the order a bit this time. And could I ask you one other thing? As part of your reply, because it's our last round, if you had to identify one priority to make sure industry meets the mobility challenge and policymakers help you meet the mobility challenge, what would it be? Didier first.
Wow. Okay, first, let me be quite positive and probably much more optimistic than the traditional way in our industry. I'm strongly believe that, of course, as we discussed today during the press meeting before, we will face some difficult years, but we will go out of this one. And we'll go out of this one even stronger than what we were before. So I'm strongly believe that it's for many young graduate a strong opportunity to join the business and to make sure that they will discover a fantastic industry when they can learn a lot, when they can do a lot of different jobs within our organization and with a lot of passion. Because even if we said, okay, car is much less interesting than in the past, there is still a lot of passion on the car, and I believe it's good. One comment in terms of innovation and request from the, or let's say the direction I really wish to have with the European Union. I believe in terms of innovation from our side, we should not just think about the innovation in terms of technology, but also innovation in terms of management. Because if we want to develop business in Europe, we cannot just have research and development. I'm sorry, but everybody will not work in the future in the R&D center in Europe. We have to keep also some manufacturing activity. How to keep strong competitiveness, and we need to be able to find a strong way and totally change our mind in terms of management style. And for the members of the European Commission, I believe one of the key elements, as I said before, is predictability. It doesn't mean that we refuse the challenge, not at all, but make sure that we can have a clear vision of where do we want to go, how can we share that and develop this one together and not against.
Okay, thank you very much. Alfredo, if you could pick up on this dilemma of an industry in crisis, can you continue with the funding, austerity times, how do we find the money?
I mean, I don't think that we can stop investing in research and development because it's all about competitiveness, as Didier said before. So it's really important to keep our competitiveness in the marketplace. From a legislative standpoint, I think that yes, the European Parliament and the Commission can help us in avoiding redundant regulation in this period of time, and maybe retiming some of the key regulations that are being introduced to wait for better times. I just make you an example. When Euro 5 was introduced, it was just 4 years ago. Unfortunately, because of the crisis starting from 2008, the number of Euro 5 vehicles on the road is much more limited than it was envisioned at the beginning, and is certainly much lower than the original purpose of the legislation was encompassing. So I think in an ideal world, every timing of the introduction of Euro 6 would have helped us a lot.
Okay.
I just hope that in the future this can be taken into account.
That would be your priority. I will get the Commissioner to react to that in a moment. But Libor, and I wonder if you can pick up, I don't know whether you can give the answer to the question about if we're not doing as well as others in terms of our research, what are they doing better? And where do we see this most evidently?
Talking about car industry, I think we are doing better. The European car industry is, I'm convinced, the best in the world. But we have to continue in this. Yes, innovation, R&D, that's the key word. Without innovation, in 5 or 10 years' time, we would be the losers. So we have to go in that direction. What I would wish personally, that there is more cooperation between the producers and the policymakers. And I'm saying it as a member of the parliament, because in my political work, I learned that we always have to find a compromise. Compromise between, when we talk about car industry, the needs of the car industry, environment, employment. So that would be, that would be my sort of advice, my suggestion. If we do this when we meet again in 10 years' time, the European car industry still will be number one.
Thank you, and therefore echoing Felix's call for sharing, collaboration, working together. Commissioner, Alfredo gave you his priority. Can you react to that and give me yours?
This time I can say he's pretty right. No, one thing which is obvious, we have enormous evidence that the health issues are getting more and more severe. So we have PM10, and we have also the NOx issue, which are very much connected also to the transport, especially in the city centers. So I think that going in that direction is the right way. Public-private investments together, we have tried to do it via supporting also through the European Investment Bank, which was the program which was explicitly supporting also the car industry sector. Predictability, I fully agree, without predictability we can do nothing. The policy which I would strongly support, of course, the policy which would fit to the new future of sustainability would be the policy in which environment would not work against business, but rather using the business innovation potential to change our lives.
Thank you very much indeed. And a last word to Commissioner Hedegaard before we move to our next topic.
I will just say that I agree with those who have said that innovation in the European car industry is very strong. I mean, compare, for instance, to the American car industry and what happened in Detroit some years ago. They had sort of fallen asleep. Europe is very strong. That is very good. I will argue that that has also to do, not only, but it has also to do with the fact that we have had regulations that have sort of pushed and pulled the industry. So we have actually made remarkable progress over the last years. You asked, what about market take-up? And there I think each of us, also as consumers, have to sort of bear our responsibility. Because what are we choosing to drive in? What are we doing when we are down there deciding what to drive in? So there is also an important aspect that is about awareness and consumers' awareness. And Jackie, very last point, it has been mentioned it should be affordable to buy a car. I agree with that. But sometimes when we put emphasis on the innovation part, yes, then cars get slightly more expensive, as for instance with the last round of negotiations. But then, when they are becoming more energy efficient, then it's of course also cheaper to drive the car afterwards. And in a time where we have increasing oil prices and gasoline prices, then the cost totally will come down. So we have to see the whole picture, and actually what we have been proposing recently, that will bring the total cost down. Very final point, predictability. I agree with that. That's why we are making long-term planning in the Commission. But just to end, and I say this with a friendly sort of smile, but still, then also the sector should not always ask us to postpone regulation, because we cannot both come up with forward-looking, give you long time and predictability, if then the only purpose is to say, oh, can't you wait with that just a few years from now? We are right now thinking about what after 2020, and we will soon sort of present some sorts of that and then have the dialogue with all the stakeholders, and I'm looking forward very much to that.
Thank you, and on that passionate note, will you join me in thanking our young delegates in particular for their fabulous questions, all our guest speakers, Commissioner, MEP, thank you so much. Thank you to our CEOs for a very stimulating debate. Please will you join me in a round of applause for our speakers in this session. And I'm knowing how busy you are, Commissioners, I'm sure you need to slip away. We're not going to switch from the green to the grey zone quite just yet, but also, Libor, I don't know whether you can stay with us or you probably have pressing Parliament business. Thank you so much for being with us. We are immensely grateful to you for that. Now, before we move to our second topic, skills, I'm going to just tell you a little bit about a competition Many of the delegates here this afternoon are here, the young delegates, because they took part and won a competition. This was called Ask a CEO, very much the theme and the way we are working this afternoon. And the entrants, aged 18 to 30, were asked to create and send in a 2-minute video featuring a question to an automotive industry CEO. 10 of those entries were selected by a committee made up of the youth lobby group Think Young. I mentioned them earlier, you're going to hear from them shortly. The NGO Confrontation Europe and ACEA. And the winners are here with us today. So let's find out, they did a 2-minute video, but this is a 3 minutes, all pulled together, short, sharp. Let's find out what they wanted to know. Let's see that video.
Is electromobility really sustainable? Can it really restore mobility for the masses in the long run? How can we involve everyone? And how can we involve you in particular to join the car sharing program? How do you prioritize the data and with the spread of personal data? Because I don't want it to be observed by other people. I love fair trade orange juice. Why am I not able to buy a fair trade car?
Reasonable price to the customer.
Is it car makers are ready for decrease the number of cars produced in order to increase mobility services? Is it possible to stop thinking of cars just as products but also as commodities and services?
What about the adoption of the solar panels for the energy of the cars?
What is your vision of how the automotive industry and our cars will look like when you will take full advantage of the development in information technology?
How does your industry deal with the reality that the world is becoming more urban and slowly but surely the demand for cars seems to be decreasing socially, environmentally and economically?
Okay, so some familiar faces there. You'll recognise a number of them from in the room. I'm not going to tell you now. What we did then was we asked the CEOs to vote on their top question out of those. We also asked the public to vote, and then they drew up a short list, and this morning the young delegates chose the final question. Later on, we will reveal who those two winners, they're all winners as I stressed, but these are two top prizes, and we will find out who won them a little bit later on. But we are now going to move to the second topic. It's already been mentioned. There was a question about Erasmus earlier. We will come back to it, I promise you. The topic this afternoon is how to ensure that young people are equipped with the skills that they will need to develop and to deliver the innovations that you all said in the first session were so vital. Let me first welcome our guest speakers in this session. Commissioner Laszlo Andor. Welcome, Commissioner. Laszlo Andor is, of course, European Commissioner for Employment, Social Affairs and Inclusion. We're delighted to have you with us. Pablo Zalba Bidegain. I don't know whether I pronounced your surname properly. MEP, who is a member of the European Parliament's Economic and Monetary Affairs Committee and Vice President of the Education and Youth Intergroup, so cares very much about the sort of issues we are talking about. His colleague, I will introduce him later, but just so that you know, I'm sure he will be with us in a moment, Yorgo Chatzimarkakis, MEP, who is a member of the European Parliament's Internal Market and Consumer Protection Committee and was rapporteur on the Competitiveness and Innovation Framework Programme. Sergio Marchioni, you don't need me to introduce him again, and he already introduced, but let me introduce him again, Harry Schippers, who is president of DAF Trucks and chair of ACEA's Commercial Vehicle Board. In this case, before we hear from our young delegates, we're also going to hear a short presentation. A special study was commissioned into what we call the youth skills mismatch, and we're going to hear about that study from the people who carried it out. I'm going to welcome in a moment Andrea Gerosa, who is founder, and I love this job title, I want this job title from now on, founder and chief thinker, isn't that cool, of Think Young, a think tank and lobby group based in Brussels. And the Our Future Mobility Now project commissioned this study to stimulate a wider debate on the role of young people in a changing Europe. So Andrea's going to talk to us for no more than 5 minutes, present some of the headline results, and then we will hear from our young delegates, and then we'll have the discussion. Sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Jackie. I've been given 5 minutes to sum up work we've done in 8 months and a study we've prepared of 60 pages and 1.5 hours documentary. I'll do my best. First slide, it's about us. We are a think tank based in Brussels, 14 people. We work with a number of partners, Soros Foundation, Google, Erste Stiftung, and others. Second slide, what is skills mismatch? Skills mismatch is the skills that mastered by youth versus the skills and the needed of the industries. So what the industry is looking for and what you have. From an article that was on Harvard Business Review, July 2012, the people in the car companies, but in all the industry, they do have a problem. 95% of young achievers, they engage in job searching activities, which means that all your best employees, they're looking to leave. And they leave a job after 28 months that you hired them on average, which means that you hire them, you train them probably for 6 or 12 months, and then soon after they leave, which is a very big problem that you have, and we try to give you a couple of hints how to solve it. Methodology of our study, we had 22 questions, 868 respondents, and it was based on all over Europe, under 30 years old, carried out on 16 languages, so everybody could answer even if they didn't speak English. It was not only a quantitative one, but also a qualitative one. We interviewed 6 HR managers for different industries, from the automotive, but also IT, the European Space Agency, and others, and we did this documentary that I mentioned before. So what is the ideal job for young people? Strangely enough, you're not looking for money, guys, but you're looking for something that is challenging. Then, but way below something that is remunerating. And then again, it's all feelings and nothing concrete that you're looking for in the sense of traveling, dynamic, happiness, fun, passion. It's something that gives you a possibility to learn and to network. And probably that's where is the skills mismatch. So you're looking for something and then you join a company and you don't find it. So which are the perceptions of young people? Youth, they do not feel particularly mismatched. You feel that you're okay with the job you have, and you finally, because you're very adaptable, you have the willingness to relocate and to accept a challenging job. The most important one, again, for the people of the industry, for the car companies, the young people, they're not looking for a specific position, they're looking to work in a specific industry. So you guys, you should work together to make your industry more attractive, rather than give it a nice title. As long as we know, there are a lot of vice presidents and a lot of senior vice presidents and a lot of different very good titles that are given in the companies. Probably that was good in the 80s and the 90s. I don't know if it's good anymore. And then we also we created a mismatch index, and we hope to see this on Wikipedia soon in the future, and be called maybe the Think Young Mismatch Index, or Alessandro Tirapani, which was the guy who carried out the study. And as you see from this index, basically all the data that goes towards 1 and 1.2 are the young people who don't feel mismatch. And as you see here, most of the people, they're either fairly okay with their job, or actually they don't feel mismatch. So when young people, they join the work, they don't feel mismatch, as probably the industry think. There is a huge formula behind that I can show you to people interested after. Advice to young people: connect to the industry, be entrepreneurial, guys. If I can give you one big one, be entrepreneurial. Work your bottom off, to be polite. Create a focus profile, put carefully or selected internship, and especially propose a project life. When you apply to a company, tell them what your life project is. Why are you joining this specific company, and why not another one? We also have some advice to companies. First one, highlight very specific skills in job advertisement. Young people, they're not looking for money, they're looking for skills. Identify the transferable skills. Sometimes young people, they learn something in a job position, they come to a new job in which they don't need that, but maybe that can be useful long in term in the future. And very last one, again, not related to money, but related to the way people are looking for work, redesign your workspace, consider the aspiration of young people. About the EU programs, and someone before mentioned the Erasmus, strangely enough, there are 6 European programs related to young people and education, and the green bar, each one of them, the green bar is when young people never heard of them. The people of the Commission just left, and that's a pity, but I make sure they will receive this slide, meaning that if you look at this, the only program that young people know and use is the Erasmus. All the others, most of them, are unknown. There are programs out there, money thrown on something that could be good for your education, but you don't know it. So, communication problem from the European Commission, and here it goes. Advice to EU policymakers: enforce and promote current EU projects. Remember, guys, 1% reduction in school dropouts will mean 500,000 more skilled people on the job market. And I close with a sentence from Westar: education should develop core capabilities and the ability to learn and adapt. We are living in a changing world. Survival of the fittest, someone said before. Ability to learn is the key core competition that you need to learn. We close with something very positive, because we like to give good news. What is labeled now by the media as labeled lost generation is instead mobile, adaptable, and in the long term, idealistic. So there is a good potential in Europe to make something good out of the young people. The future is us, so make sure you give a good impression today and in the future in your career. I finish now. I give you 30 seconds back, Jackie. You can use them as much as you want.
Very generous. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. And I was just wondering, when you made that point about job advertisements, if you had a job advertisement for the chief thinker, what you put in your CV to show that you're worthy of that title. Question: should every organisation have a chief thinker? Perhaps we can come back to that if we have time in the discussion. Okay, you know the format because we did it in the last session. This time, talking about skills for the future. We had a similar group working on these issues, and I'd like to ask Jay to sum up for us the headlines out of that discussion in a couple of minutes, please, Jay. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. My name's Jay Schofield from Jaguar Land Rover. I've been involved in the skills workshop this morning, and a lot of that discussion has been centred around the expectations of industry and the mechanisms in place to help young people meet those expectations. A few of the key questions that came out of this workshop I'll just recount briefly and then leave the panel with one question that I hope you could answer. So, does the supply of young people coming out of education have the required skills and diversity? Is the traditional method of higher education failing to meet industry requirements? Does industry need to engage with people prior to completing higher education? And can business extract greater value from developing professional apprenticeships? And finally, just try to summarise all that, and the question for the panel would be, where do you see your responsibility towards young people today?
Okay, a very straightforward, direct question. Where do you see, and could I take this opportunity to welcome, I did introduce you in your absence, but Yorgo Chatzimarkakis, MEP, welcome. Thank you for joining our discussion this afternoon. So, let me first come out, and Commissioner, if I could come to you first, just for a reaction to what you've heard from Jay, from the skills mismatch. First thoughts from you, please.
Yes, one of the questions I heard is an easy yes or no question, whether the young people have the right mix of skills. Of course, on the macro level, the answer must be closer to the no, but we have to be very specific about where in Europe we have less problems and where in Europe we have a lot more problems than elsewhere. And in this respect, Europe is really divided. The many faces of the European member states. We have countries like Germany and some of the luckier neighbors of Germany, where we have quite good impact of industry, also local industry, on the training system, the dual learning model, and the good transition from school to work. This is a very strong and robust model, which also in the time of the recession, where there was no sufficient demand for much of the products of industry, at least in Europe, worked quite well and kept the youth unemployment rate low. And then there is the opposite, and mainly, but not exclusively, in Southern Europe, where we have to work a lot in terms of improving the curricula, modernizing education, but particularly vocational training. So when, especially on a day when the Commission just adopted a new industrial policy, as I'm sure you already heard it, maybe also discussed, the human capital pillar of this is absolutely fundamental, and that begins with school attendance, on which we saw a chart, the importance of reducing school dropouts, but also to strengthen, and if necessary in certain countries, to completely overhaul vocational training.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Pablo, if I could come to you next, and just a thought to this question of course, we're talking about vocational training, we're talking about education, we're talking about the links, but what can the EU do? Because, of course, this is fundamentally something primarily for member states.
Yeah, we have to be sure that our youngs are the best prepared in the world. I think one of the advices that Andreas gave us was be entrepreneurial. This is one of the pillars of the economic recovery. I have one obsession. It's not related to the automotive industry, but it's linked. I always question why companies like Google, companies like Facebook were not born in Europe, but were born in California or the US. I asked this once to one of the vice presidents of Google, and he answered me very simple answer. Fundraising, failure acceptance, and Stanford. This means education, this means skills, but this does not apply to the new economy industry or new economy world. Applies also to more traditional industries like automotive industry. I think we cannot compete, and I'm not an expert in automotive, and I don't want to give lessons to Sergio and other representatives, but we cannot compete no longer in cheap cars. I think we have to change our mind and start to think not in the automotive industry, but in mobility industry. And for this, we need the best prepared youngs in the world. Otherwise, it will be absolutely impossible. There are many opportunities in this world, but for take advantage of these opportunities, I insist we need the best prepared youngers.
Okay, and we can discuss a little bit more how we get them. Jorgo, if I could ask you, in terms of the skills mismatch, between the skills that young people have. I mean, it is ironic we're in a time of very high unemployment, and yet employers say they can't find the skills they need. What do you see as the key challenge? This has been on the EU agenda for a while. We still have a problem.
The key challenge is to adapt. Look at Finland. Finland faced a crisis late 80s, early 90s, and then changed everything, changed the schooling system. By the way, it was taken from Eastern Germany. They took the Eastern German model, implemented it, and immediately became very, very competitive and established this entrepreneurial approach. And then Finland, which is for me a very good case to show that it works, because they had to change their mentality, they took the 3 T's: talents, technology, and tolerance, and brought it to Oulu in the north of Finland, and established there an atmosphere where people can use their talent for technology. But this doesn't work everywhere. I mean, Laszlo, you mentioned Germany. I am a German MEP, but with a Greek background. I know that the mentality in Germany is, as you said, in favor of vocational training. 10 years ago, there were 25% of Germans who couldn't find a job or vocational job. So this is not easy. There are times where it goes better, there are times where it's harder. How, and that's the challenge, how to change the mentality all over Europe. Even in Germany, the term being entrepreneurial, being an entrepreneur is not very positive. Don't ask me about Greece. There it's absolutely negative to be an entrepreneur. So we have to have a common approach to that notion, to that term, and then we go further.
Thank you very much indeed. Harry, if I could come to you next as I'm on this side. We've all agreed on the importance of this issue. Where do you see the key challenge to finding an answer to it?
Well, I think let me start with that the automotive industry and also the truck industry is we're a global industry, and I think with innovative, world-leading products. So if number one is on the list for people to find challenging jobs, I think our industry provides challenging jobs. So let me start with that. That's a very attractive point for our industry to start with. I think for youngsters who are looking for jobs in the automotive industry, it's key. Mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, all the technical skills are very important. But also, if you don't study something in those technical areas, I think it's important to have an interest in those technical skills. What you've studied is one thing. I think when we look for new people, we look for what kind of experience do those people bring. And then I'm not talking about job experience or work experience, but trainees, apprenticeships, projects that you've been involved in. That tells us more about the person and the qualifications of the candidates than just the training themselves.
Okay, thank you very much. Sergio, when you're looking for... Where's he gone? Where's he gone? He's gone. There he is. When you're looking for someone, what are you looking for? What is your ideal person? Is it a mix of skills? And what is the challenge in finding them? Why is it proving so difficult for so many sectors to find scientists and engineers?
Well, I mean, that last question is a separate question from the first. The reason why you're not attracting people in the sciences is because we make it to be the less glorious of all activities that you can do. I mean, there's a stigma associated with being sort of a nerdish scientist, and I think that a lot of people are turned off, and that is not true of the United States, it's not true of Germany, but it is true in a large part of Europe, and I think that a comment that the Commissioner made about the uneven distribution of skill sets across Europe is a reflection on the cultural differences that exist within Europe, where effectively on the northern part of Europe, the technical side is encouraged and reinforced, and there is a much stronger tendency to look at the sort of the professional arts, medicine, law, teaching as being sort of the more noble arts in the Club Med countries, including Spain and Italy and France. And that is a very, very bad distinction, and it's actually working to the disfavor of the Club Med contingent in Europe into coming up on the technical skill side. The question that you asked me about what are required, look, in order to build a car, you need engineers. You can't get philosophers, you can get chief thinkers. By the way, the question about who's a chief thinker, is that's the chief executive's job. I realize he's practicing to be one of a bigger entity. He's only got 40 people working with him. I'm sure he's going to aim for 440,000 in no time. But the complex organizations, especially companies that engage in the design, manufacture, and distribution of cars, are not repository of pure technical skills. We need a variety of talents to come to bear on that process. And so I met some of them over lunch, some people that had experience. I asked somebody who was doing studies in international business, which is something I never studied, although I spent 9 years in university, I never got to international business. I don't even think it was a faculty at the time. I don't know what people do in international business. I mean, I practice it every day, but I don't know what people do academically in the area. And I find interesting how even the academic side of European life has changed to adapt to changing conditions. And we're breeding people, I think, who come with a different set of skills to work on a very difficult problem, which is that of successfully designing, manufacturing, and selling cars. So I welcome everybody from the philosophical end of the spectrum. I'm a philosophy major in my first life, to people who have done business, who have done engineering. I mean, to run a business like ours requires all skills, and so they're all welcome. I'm not an engineer, Alfredo's not an engineer, and he runs the truck side. Harry is not an engineer. Where's Didier? You an engineer?
Well, you need all the skills. You need all of them.
Well, you're an engineer and you're French. You got 2 strikes against you.
Okay, we won't get into that. Malta, I think we can take some more questions now from our young delegates. So Malta, you had a comment or a question, I don't know.
Thank you very much. You already mentioned the diversity and needs of the customers and the diversity of challenges from the political and society, from the political side and the society. Now, how high would you value the topic diversity within the company as a core issue to address those needs.
Okay, so really picking up on what Sergio was just saying in terms of needing this diversity. Hang on a second, because we've got a couple of people who... Mirko, you were also part of that group. What did you come up with?
Yeah, a very, very big question to this morning was, and we were talking about the academical changes in the last few years was, and I'm pretty sure thousands of students all over Europe asking the same question. If we're talking to skills, question to the CEO, what kind of profile do you prefer as a graduate? Do you prefer a very young graduate, 21 years old, who ran through his studies, does his bachelor and master in a very less years, or do you prefer somebody who took some longer time and did some internships, gained some practical experience, and went abroad? So this is the question: which profile do you prefer most?
Thank you. A very concrete question there. What do you want from these guys? You wanted one, and I'm going to ask you to repeat your Erasmus question, because I think it's something the Commissioner would like to particularly pick up on from the first session. Please.
Another question, what we touched on the workshop this morning about skills was entrepreneurship, and it was already mentioned by, I think, Commissioner Solvay, not only education and skills. I was more wondering about legislation and policy, how it is, why it is so difficult in Europe to open your own company or your own idea legally as a young professional, and why do we then lose all these bright ideas or bright individuals maybe across the pond to other countries?
So you don't feel there's been a lot of talk in Brussels about entrepreneurship and how they're fostering entrepreneurship. You don't think it's really working. Did you ask your question from earlier again? Thanks.
This morning in the introduction, Mr. Hodak highlighted that being international is one of the aspects of future mobilities. We got from the news that the Erasmus program is at risk due to lack of funds, and I would like to know if the European Commission or industry would like to do something to avoid this.
Okay, very good question there. Thank you, particularly at this time when the budget negotiations are going on and everything's at threat and under risk. Any more, and it can be from this end as well. Please, Selma.
I'm Selma, and I have a question. Before, someone made a reference to we're moving towards a service economy, and now all the skills we're referring to are engineering and scientists, and I think the diverse workforce requires certain more adaptable. Currently, I know a lot of mechanical engineers who's never had economic courses, so I don't know if it's just going to be a workforce just made up of engineers and scientists, or if a more broader scope is necessary.
Thank you very much indeed, Salma. Any more from all of you? Yes, please. Marco.
Yeah. And my question is related to the relationship between the new entry in a company, so I call them the rookie, and the experienced people. So I'm asking which is the best way to share the knowledge, the know-how between the experienced people and the new entry in the company.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we'd better go back, and because there's a lot to pick up on there. And Commissioner, if I could come to you first, because there was that very specific question, but also on this issue of entrepreneurship. We talk a lot about it in Brussels, a feeling we're not quite getting it right from here.
Indeed, starting with the Erasmus, it's a question of a supplementary budget. The point is that in this year, much of the programs of the EU actually accelerated, and not only in the case of the Erasmus, but also in the European Social Fund, we actually exploited our opportunities too early. So the member states have to agree on a supplementary budget, and there will be no problem with the continuing funding of these programs. I hope the member states who can decide on this come to a good conclusion very quickly. The question of the entrepreneurship, yes, it has to be, in a way, a horizontal knowledge, which we promote across the board in every country, because this is clearly lacking. That's why we also included the importance of entrepreneurship in the Youth Opportunities Initiative in December last year, because we responded to the high unemployment in Europe, especially in the south, with this package, which was not really originally planned, but we had to collect all the possible components of an EU response. And entrepreneurship, supported by various EU financial instruments, not only the ESF, but also the Progress Microfinance Facility, have been promoted in several countries. I could give examples how it brings new opportunities, even in Greece, which is not always mentioned in kind of positive light, but I had opportunities with the previous government to discuss that they had, big lags with ESF absorption, and that was one of the ideas of the previous commissioner, Ms. Diamantopoulou, by the way, to boost entrepreneurship projects among the young people, startups and whatever. But your question was pointing to the administrative side. And this is a matter for the economic governance. Because if the Commission, from the analysis of the given country, detects a major deficiency in this area, we can actually recommend changing legislation and creating a more positive environment. And just one word about the diversity, because indeed this is a serious issue. In this sector, which we speak about, predominantly we have large companies which produce for a big market, if not for the world market. And in these cases, obviously, the diversity of the workforce is an asset. And the diversity also of the management should be seen as an asset, where there is a combination of younger and older men and women. And you will see later this year further initiatives from the Commission to promote diversity and gender balance.
Watch this space, ladies and gentlemen. And I know this was an issue that diversity came up very much in this workshop, relating as well to how do you sell careers in this sector by showing that if you do have an engineering degree, there are many ways you can use it, many different opportunities. I think that was something you all felt, perhaps the focus sometimes. Perception to young people is, oh, I've just got to be a straight engineer. It's a very focused job. Yorgo, you mentioned this question of entrepreneurship and mentality first. A word on what, if anything, can policymakers actually do anything about it? Or is this something that needs to grow through schools, through companies, bottom up, as it were?
First of all, we have to adapt our curricula. We need to learn, but also societies have to learn, schools have to learn, and our curricula, at least, I can give you an example. Yesterday my daughter came up and told me, why do I have to learn all these old-fashioned math things? I'm bored. Okay, she's 13, she's in a difficult age, but in fact, do our pupils learn the right thing? I think no. I think we should adapt. That's one. Point two, what can policymakers do? And there was one question, why all these young people, why the brightest minds go to maybe cross the Atlantic? Why? We don't have enough money for innovation. We don't provide for money that goes also for risk. We don't do that. I myself, as a member of parliament, I was a rapporteur, so the central parliamentarian for the previous CIP, Competitiveness Innovation Program. I could detect, and I say this to the Commission, that there's only one project that has been paid for by the European Commission that is very innovative and was a blockbuster, that's Skype. That's the only example. All the other ones are other side of the ocean and more China. So we do not give enough money to innovation, to preface innovation. That's our big problem, and we need to learn that. And we do the same mistakes year after year after year.
Thank you so very much. Going back to the theme of our first discussion and showing how crucial this link is, although there is a coloured line down the middle, that is a line that is blurred very much all the time. Pablo, a thought from you, because you talked about having the best prepared youngsters. Is teaching them leadership, entrepreneurship, employability skills, if I can put it like that, part of that?
I think we are not doing enough. I firmly believe that something is missing regarding to the lack of entrepreneurship. I think if you compare the data, roughly around 50% of the European youngs have never thought about starting a new business. If you compare that data with the US, if I am right, it's around 25% of the US youngers never thought about starting a new business. So it's key. We have to work not only in education, but also in values, also in trying to persuade young people that entrepreneurs is key for them, for the whole Europe, not only for them. One of the few good things about this dramatic economic crisis is that many youngers now are planning to set up a new company because they have no alternative. But I would like this alternative, entrepreneurship alternative, will be something not because there are lack of alternatives, because it's an alternative. It's an alternative, and we have to work in many fields. We have to reduce bureaucratic barriers. I mentioned before fundraising. We have to be sure that any young people with a good idea, be sure that he is able to implement it. He cannot be sure he cannot implement it because of lack of finance. We have to work in failure acceptance. In Europe, this is a big mistake. When you fail, you have an stigma. In the US, failure is an active. We have to remember here that Steve Jobs fails, and after his failure, he become even bigger. And I agree with Giorgio, we have no money.
Yeah.
But there are ways to promote growth, to promote entrepreneurship that need no money. We have to develop European single market.
Okay.
A young person who set up a company in any single place in Europe, he has to cope with the whole European Union, not only with his country.
Okay, I'm going to stop you there because I want to get a chance to react on that. Sergio, if I could come back to you and ask you to pick up on this question of what is, we sort of talked about it, but I want to expand it, the profile of a graduate. I was very struck by something in the study about the mismatch. There's another mismatch, and it's a perceptions mismatch. Young people saying, yeah, I've got the skills I need, and employers, companies like yours saying, hey, we can't find the guys with the skills we need. Why do you think that is? And can we fix it somehow? Because if we discover what the underlying cause of the perception mismatch is, maybe we begin to tackle the skills mismatch.
Look, I happened to be in Columbus, Ohio, Monday night, and I had a 1-hour meeting with the governor of the state of Ohio, a charming individual with whom we had a long discussion about the university in Columbus and the work that was being done with that campus and with all the community colleges that are around the state of Ohio. There's been a business, university, community college collaboration that has been organized by the governor to try and get business to specify the skill sets that are required to run the businesses in the state. This is a relatively large state. It also happens to be affluent because of the natural gas that was found there. So it's not in dire need financially. But we've been collaborating with Ohio. We've been doing this in the state of Michigan. We've been doing it in a variety of other jurisdictions. We do this in Brazil. It is very, very difficult to do it in Europe because educators in Europe have a preconceived notion that they actually understand what needs to be taught. And so as long as you've got this kind of attitude towards industry, industry will never be able to influence the choices, ever. And so you end up producing a whole pile of people that effectively have to be retrained by us whenever we take them in, which is fine, but it's going to extend the puberty period of people into business for a lot longer than they should be in.
Okay, so teachers are part of the problem, thinking they know the answers. Harry, parents as well. I think one of the things that's been coming up is sort of get them young. You need to instill a recognition that these careers can be interesting. You can need to instill entrepreneurial ideas quite young. Is that part of the key to unlocking this mismatch?
I don't think that communication, more communication would help. That's my opinion. I think parents is a good example. Parents tell kids what to do and you know what happens? Typically they don't do it because it's your parents telling them. So I don't think it's a lack of communication. I think what Sergio is saying is key, that as businesses we work closely with governments and universities. I think we do a very nice job in the Netherlands with my company DAF Trucks. I think we need to get diversity of students in. Technical and engineering backgrounds are important, but the best decisions are taken in teams with many more disciplines than just engineers. As automotive industry, we need to do our best to attract the best people. And I think what we have a responsibility there to offer traineeships, apprenticeships, and to get experienced people and give the students the right insights in what the businesses need. And I think as an industry, we've got something unique to offer, which is a great product. I think the cars, the trucks that we produce and as an industry allow people to identify with the product. You recognize them on the road, you see the product every day, you're your family, friends know what you're talking about if you say that you work for one of our companies. And it helps a lot to retain people. The high turnover percentages I heard earlier, I don't recognize in our industry. I think when we are able to attract the right people, we can offer them a challenging career, and we are able to hold on to those people very well. So I would say to all of you, choose the automotive industry for a challenging career.
Thank you very much indeed, Harry. More comments, questions? Have you had one? I think you did. Let me just see if others who haven't in this round come back to you, Jay. Claudius, please.
I would like to come back to companies like Google or Amazon for one more time. These companies do offer young people a lot of room of creativity and to become innovative within the company and to be kind of an entrepreneur within the company. So what would or what will the automotive industry do to become more Google-licious?
Google-licious. Okay, we'll come back on that. Jay, I think you wanted to come back in.
I just want to pick up on some of the points that have been made, really, in that we've had comments about there's not enough support for young people wanting to come through and be entrepreneurial. We've had comments around curriculum material not being suitable or applicable to young people looking to enter industry. And we've had the comment as well about the profile of the engineer being not very sexy, not very glamorous enough, is still viewed to be a bit of a geek. We've identified the problems. What are people doing about it? You know, the profile, if we want to encourage people into engineering, we need to elevate it, you know, to the same level as it was 100 years ago, Industrial Revolution, you know, on the par of that, you know, doctors, lawyers, people working in the finance industry. We are no less capable. Okay. It's just that's what we choose to do. So, yeah, what we're going to do about it.
Thanks very much. There's one more. Go on, quick one, if you would.
Okay. I just wanted to talk about the new generation, and that was I don't know if some followed the Olympics or probably did, but that in London was a bit talk about the new generation that was part of the Olympic 2012 as well in London. And for example, I've read as well an article about that. Probably not the first priority of young people anymore in America is to have a driving license. And I always remember my father saying that he talked me about his first new car he had, which in fact was a Fiat. And I was wondering, I'm 23 and I haven't had or didn't buy a car so far, and wanted to know what the perception of that industry, the car industry, is about the new generation, which is more much like with applications, smartphones, and not necessarily having a driving license.
Okay, thanks very much. Any other questions from our young delegate? Yes, sorry, I didn't notice, sorry.
I just thought so simply about the name of skills, and I just made a so simple equation. So I say that the skills equals education, and also the skills equals technology. So we can also say that this technology depends on education, as simply. But if we think that everybody wants to create some highly skilled persons at the end of their education, but the result of the education, I mean the technology, doesn't implement it in 21st century is so much in the education itself. So I want to ask the CEOs and maybe what should be done in the way that people educated in higher institutions, maybe because there need to be a revolution in the way that people are educated.
Okay, he wants a revolution. You heard it here. Any more down from the innovation side of the room, as these issues are so closely linked? Anybody want to come in? Yes, please, Enrico.
Hi, thank you. Just one question concerning those skills that young people need to work in the automotive field. Apart from engineering skills, universities, graduations, don't you think that one of the most important skills that people need to do to work in the automotive field, but also in other fields, is the passion, the love that they use to work in what they do in their everyday lives, in their everyday work?
You're clearly all very passionate about it. So did you want to come in, Felix? Quick one, and then we'll come back to the panel.
An important aspect of coming further in points is the management of knowledge. How do you, in your companies, integrate young people regarding that management of knowledge, and how strongly can they influence, for example, also processes of decision making?
Thank you. So picking up on that point from earlier. Okay, a chance for a last round of comments, and I'll do it in reverse order. So I'll start with Sergio, Harry, and then I'll come to our policymakers. Please pick up on whatever points you would like to. But again, like with the first panel, try to draw some conclusions. If you had to identify one priority, and ideally one for your industry, one for the policymakers, to enable, somebody used the word Googlicious earlier, to give people the skills they will need to be Googlicious, i.e. to get this better match, get the skills that you need, what would it be? If you could add that to whatever you want to react to from the young delegates, please.
To begin with, I don't like Google. I much prefer them if they were from Apple than from Google, since you're picking sort of ideal companies. Look, if you read the introductory letter that you get from Apple when you join the company, right? It defines a place as a place with no barriers, where you're allowed to be yourself, and where you have to go. I mean, I think the term that they use, if you want to swim in the deep end, you've come to the right place. I think the obligation is on people like us as chief executives or as leaders to try and create environments where that happens. And I guarantee you that Fiat is not even close to that target. We have a long way to go. But I think we recognize that the ability to compete in this business is made up by fundamentally the recognition of the value of people feeling free to act. We know this is more than sort of annual report dogma that you put there for your letter to the shareholders. It's fundamental. The problem that I have is that to do this in an environment such as Europe, which is so historically confined and structured, is very difficult. The reason why California, and interesting that you drew a distinction properly between California and the rest of the United States. Most Americans would agree with you, but the reason why some things happen over there is because people are free to swim in the deep end. We do everything in Europe to try and make that a difficult process. And I think that whether he's the chief thinker, I mean, he's based in Brussels. You live in Lausanne, in Geneva. I mean, these are people who have made other choices. He's Italian, but he doesn't live there. In Italy, for him to do what he's doing, it would be a bloody nightmare. It would have taken him a year and a half before he filled out all the paperwork to start a business, with 14 people and really trying. It would have been impossible. So other politicians and policymakers understand that their role is to remove obstacles for the creation of value and the creation of the conditions for business to succeed, or they're going to fail.
Okay, thank you very much. Harry, pick up on anything you'd like to, and your priorities, if you would, please.
Well, I think a high priority for me would be for students when they complete their university degree that they're not limited to a short period of 4 or 5 years. I think it's very worthwhile for us as companies that people have done more than just reading the textbooks. I think, Sergio, you had 9 years, so I think that's the proof.
I'm a slow learner.
I think that's the proof. The other comment somebody made is passion. I think in our industry, especially in our industry, we're looking for people with passion. And passion and some experience is more important than the name of the education that you did.
Thank you. And that very much echoing the study, talking about people that are idealistic, they don't want to, they're not just driven by money, they want to believe in what they're doing. So very much an echo there. Jorgo.
I would like to pick up passion and diversity and to add team spirit. Passion, why? Because you need people who are really in love with what they do. If I look into my office, I'm an MEP, I have some people working sometimes overnight there, very hard job. If they don't have passion, they won't survive. Or me as a politician, you don't have passion, you don't survive in this job. So this is key. Thank you for mentioning that. Diversity, which was said. I need a nerd in my office. I need a Greek in my office. I need a typical German in my office. Otherwise, I wouldn't do my job. I need diversity. But if they don't act together, if there's no team spirit, they do nothing. So these are the three, for me, key issues: passion, diversity. Be what you are, but be able to communicate with each other. Even a nerd can communicate with somebody else, and you should do so.
Thank you very much indeed. Pablo, your priorities. One, if ideally, something industry can do.
Let me first apologize to Sergio because I raised these Facebook, Googles, and so on debate, but I think it's fair to recognize the role of the automotive industry in the Western world and the rest of the world business development. And we have to remember that Industrial Revolution, long time ago, was born in Europe. And if we did it once, we can do it again. And Claudius, don't get upset, but let me disagree with you. I think companies do not have to offer nothing to young people. Young people has to be ready to offer their talent, not only to companies, but also to the rest of the society. And we, policymakers, we have to be sure that any single young is able to get that talent, no matter their background. This is our challenge. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. And Commissioner, the very last word goes to you.
Look, I think many of us probably rightly emphasize in this discussion the importance of connecting better the content of education and training and what people have to work when they are active. Just two small caveats, and I think this would kind of give a little bit of a color to the discussion. One of them is that, of course, we also need a lot of general knowledge and skills, and not only assuming that any kind of education institution can prepare for the very concrete jobs. People need to be taught also many things which they can use at a later stage or in general in society and their life in adulthood. So yes, insist with involvement of the social partners, employers and employees, because both sides need this connection for the sake of competitiveness, but also employment security to develop and improve the content. The other one is not to assume that once you learn, you never reconnect with the system of the education and training, but stress the need to provide lifelong learning. It's not that you have studied until a certain age and then you work and then after a certain point you retire, but you need to interrupt or complement your working career with new phases of learning. And this is also something which the EU can support and must support also by using the European Social Fund.
And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, will you join me in thanking everyone, the young delegates for their fabulous report back and their good questions, our guest speakers. Thank you all very much indeed. I believe, I don't know, Commissioner, if you can stay with us, and you may have to rush back to the Parliament, but we have one more piece of business to do before, if I can put it that way, before we close. And that is to announce the two top winners, top prizes in the Ask a CEO competition. And what we're going to do here is the prize, apart from a nice trophy, is they get to put their question live, don't have to play the video again, live to the CEOs, and then I will pick a CEO to answer it. So, and as I say, there were two categories, and the first was a public vote, which narrowed it down to three choices, three choices I think it was, can't remember now, two. That's right. And we asked our young delegates this morning to pick one of those. And the other was a vote among the CEOs. I don't know whether they picked it because it was the question they would most like to answer, or they thought it was the question that challenged them most. So we don't know what their thinking was, but they picked the other one. And so, as I say, what we're going to do here is I'm going to announce the winner first. We're going to do the public and young delegate vote, and then we will do the CEO vote, and I will ask a CEO to respond. So, the winner of the public and young delegate vote is Michal Natura, business student on a study program in Germany. So, Michal, congratulations. Big round of applause. Would you please do me the honour of asking your question to our CEOs?
Thank you. Thank you very much for voting. And let me put the question into the context. So, recently, like the most important technology in the world was IT, and it changed almost all industries. And certainly it will also change the automotive industry in the sense that production will become less important, but services will become more important. So going from manufacturing cars to programming cars. And still, I think the most automotive companies don't see IT as a core business, so it's mostly outsourced. And on the other hand, you have IT companies such as Google, who already built a driverless car and which is operating successfully. So I wonder, like, how you plan to close this gap? And aren't you scared that the automotive companies will only provide the hardware, whereas IT companies will all do all the programming and the services and earning all the money, and the car manufacturers just doing the hardware, especially because IT is not that developed in Europe. So what is your strategy and vision regarding this combination of IT and the automotive sector?
Thank you very much. And I would like to ask Didier Leroy to answer that one, please. They were all looking at me waiting to see who I was going to pick.
I am the winner for the answer, thank you. My very frank opinion on your question. Your question is absolutely key because this is one of the revolution of the automotive business. And it's a revolution of the automotive business with another area, which is energy. From where will come the energy? And at the same time, energy, mobility, and ITS will create a real revolution in the automotive business. This is why more and more in our way of thinking in our company, and I'm pretty sure that in many, many companies in the world they think like this also, we are thinking about become provider of mobility more than car makers. That means create the real partnership with some very strong company, because we cannot be very strong everywhere. Of course, as you said, sometimes when the people say this is outsourcing, this is because they don't want to take care of that. This is not the way that we want to do. We want to use the best of the technology with the best possible partner for that to make sure that together we can totally change the way that we provide the mobility for the members and for the people. That means clearly that it's not anymore just produce car, but provide you the total services. I said to one of your colleagues during the lunch today that you will take your mobile phone and you will say, okay, I want to go from this building to your house in, I don't know, London. And on your smartphone, you will have the full proposal about how you will go from here to the station, how you will take, which train you will take, which Eurostar you will take to go to London, at the London, which mobility or which subway line you will go close to your house, and finally at the last stage, the rent or the pre-booked of the necessary mobility for the last mile. And this is some things on which we can have a very strong impact. This is also part of the big move from the automotive business.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Didier. Before we present the awards, let's announce the other one, and we have another question and answer. So as I say, this was the CEO's choice, and their choice, the winner is Dominik Träger, who is a young intern in the automobile industry in Germany. Dominik, your question to the CEOs, please. Round of applause for Dominik.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm speechless. Well, the question. First, my motivation. Well, a topic that interests me very much is the sustainability of electromobility. And the reason is that many car and truck manufacturers focus on that topic, on electromobility, and they spend a lot of money in its research and development. And, well, the question was, is electromobility really sustainable? Because, or if we look at the electric car, the electric truck as a product for the masses, or does the massive demand for electrical power then contradict our aim to reduce our energy use, and especially in Germany, the energy transition?
Okay, thank you very much. And as you mentioned, not only cars, but trucks there, I'm going to ask Alfredo Altavilla to answer that one.
Dominic, your question is absolutely well taken, because in the industry, we always consider the so-called well-to-wheel measurement. So the total CO2 produced from the origination of the energy all the way to the running vehicle. If for a second a magician would turn the old Chinese car park into electric vehicle overnight, and the following morning all Chinese were to plug in, that would be a very bad day for the planet. So I think that we need to be very, very careful in considering electromobility as the final solution. It is responsibility of the industry to come up with a staged solution, starting from alternatives that are immediately available, such as compressed natural gas, then a transition into hybrids, and then electromobility is something for the very long future.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. And could I ask Sergio to come forward now to present the awards to our two winners? Here they come. And I should just explain, look at these very splendid awards. They match the logo for the event. If you have a look at the logo, the little chap with the trumpet, it looks very cool, sir. I like that. It is to symbolize the notion that the winners have had their say, which is what this is all about, and that you are spokespeople for future mobility, so you can speak through that. So, Sergio, if you could perhaps do the honours, and Michael, if I could ask you also to, can you pose beautifully for a photo? And to Michael as well, if you could come forward, collect your award and pose. Okay, and we are nearly at the end of proceedings, but it is my great pleasure to give the floor to Ivan Hodac, the Secretary-General of ACEA, to close proceedings. Ivan, over to you.
Thank you very much, Jackie. And first of all, before I close the whole thing, I would like to thank you for an excellent moderation. So can we give a big hand to Jackie? You have done, as always, an excellent job. Thank you to all the commissioners, the ones who are here, the ones who are not here, to our CEOs for coming, the members of the European Parliament, and first of all to the young people, to the lost generation, as somebody called it. We do not believe that you are a lost generation. We definitely do not want you to be a lost generation. I have two young guys, about your age at home, and the ones of you who know them, they know that they are not lost generation, they will not be. I think we had a remarkable debate about skills, innovation, freedom, diversity, other things. This industry obviously is going to take it, is going to learn from it, and we will continue this debate with you, with the young generation. We are not, and at least I do not believe, that we are a boring industry. I don't think that Sergio believes that we are a boring industry. I had the chance in my life to work for two, what I would call the most sexy industries that I can be. One of them is the media industry in Hollywood, and the second one is the car industry. So I think that this industry has the chance to stay sexy, is sexy, and should be attractive, and should attract also a young generation, and I hope that what we are doing will help a little bit. Let me, at the end of the day, at the end of the debate, thank also Cara and her team and the whole ACEA staff that put this excellent afternoon and day together. Can we give them a big hand, please? I wish all of you to have a very good trip home, whether you will be driving, taking public transport, or flying. And last but not least, I would like to invite you for a cocktail downstairs where you had the lunch. Thank you very much and have a nice evening. Bye-bye.